We're going to go into strength training for skiing, and we're going to start right now. So when we're looking at strength training for skiing or snowboarding, I think the big factor is right away, first of all, we are doing strength training to develop people on snow, skiing, snowboarding. We aren't developing powerlifters. We aren't developing bodybuilders. We aren't developing weightlifters. We are developing freaking skiers or snowboarders. So if we look at the sport, we are going to be moving extraordinarily fast, very, very fast. We need to look at one key factor here is that we need to think about the feet are the wheels. The trunk is the steering wheel. The trunk is really what is going to be guiding everything. Okay, so we have to have as much stability in the trunk as we possibly can. And then when we have that, we can achieve this dynamic trunk control that then makes it a lot easier to control the wheels. Then we need to look at potentially very large forces or issues of trauma that come from high speed injuries or high speed issues. Okay, so if you're landing a jump or you're going at very, very high speeds and you're trying to cut, and you're shredding that gnar, there's certain issues that are going to arise potentially from the knee, from the ankle, even if you have a trauma issue. One of our snowboarders, Kaya Kazuka, just ended up face planting, right? So she's over in Switzerland, face plants, and has her arm up over head, partially dislocates her shoulder. So these are issues that happen from the high speed trauma. So we have to be aware of those things and do these inventories, but also prepare for those potential situations when we're laying out our strength training for skiing. And so this is how we've laid out our strength training specifically inside of our strength training at Peak Strength for skiing, for snowboarding. We laid this out thinking through, okay, high speed, this is going to be sustained impulse, right? There's going to be a lot of very, very fast actions. So we've got to look at the strength characteristics around sustained impulse. Okay, sustained endurance. We might have longer runs, a minute plus, 2 minutes plus potentially. So there is a massive endurance factor involved in being stable. Finally, dynamic trunk control is going to play a massive role because the trunk is the guiding factor here. The trunk is controlling everything as far as skiing and snowboarding is concerned. So if we can factor in those three strength characteristics along with the actual aspects of the sport, now we can build out the actual actions you have to do inside the gym. So that first factor when we're getting down to the nitty gritty is analyze where are we in regards to preparation. Okay, so are we 6 months out? Are we 8 months out? How much time do we have in prep for the next season? Okay, so we can analyze that, and inside Peak Strength you would say, okay, I want my peak date here 8 months out. Then it would build out your entire program from there. Then the next thing after we analyze this, the next aspect, this is where we're at from an analysis perspective. This is how much time we have. Now let's test the exercises that transfer well to the slopes. Okay, so single leg squats, let's focus on some type of like a front squat, some type of stability, even to a point a pull-up. I know it sounds weird, but if you do pull-ups with weight in your feet, that's going to help with that trunk control. Now we can go through and test these specific exercises, even something like a high speed movement like single leg stair jumps, okay, hurdle hops, depth drop into a pause, things along those lines. How well are we able to do something like a depth drop into a broad jump so that we can see how we use that energy accordingly so that we can then transfer that well into our sport of skiing. So we're going to test our individuals and see, okay, we know how far out we are from our peak. We need to know where we are in the as far as physical condition is concerned and then build upon that. Now that third aspect would be, okay, we're going to lay out our expectations. How many days a week are you going to come in and train? 3-4 days a week? The next thing, these are the goals. These are the movements that are going to transfer well. We need to build these specific movements so that you can perform as well as possible. We need to focus on mastering the details, making sure that you're paying attention to your nutrition, making sure that you're actually identifying potential things like you're not getting enough sleep or you're not eating enough protein, or maybe you should do some meditation or get into the sauna, whatever that might be to help with that overall recovery. But we're going to lay out those clear expectations. Then we're going to build out the actual program. So we want to focus on neural coordination coordination first and strength. Okay, so if we look at a skier or a snowboarder, we want to look at, okay, let's get them to be as explosive as possible, like a 2-box power snatch, a hang clean, a hang power clean. Maybe it's a full clean. Then we want to develop that unilateral strength. So let's develop single leg squats as well as we possibly can for 3 months straight. Just develop the single leg squats, develop that pause front squat, improve that general strength. And then as we start to get closer to the actual season, we can start to become more specific. Then we want to use things like accessories and greater time under tension to train that trunk control. Let's say doing something like Dane's Fast Abs. That's going to be a great exercise to improve their trunk control. Let's say we do a drop dumbbell snatch to a box, something like this to improve trunk control at high speeds. Let's say we're doing reverse hyper to try and train that posterior chain to be a little bit more stable, to recruit the glutes a little bit more effectively. We need long time under tension, and that's going to improve that as well. And then finally, it's a really, really high speed sport. You've got to be twitchy. You've got to be able to recruit fast. You've got to be ready for these precarious positions that you're going to be in. So we need to do jumps. We need to use exercises that are going to be very, very quick. Okay, so let's say we could even do something that involves locomotion, like a lacrosse ball throw for height, do a shuttle and catch that ball. Now we're using things to train those key aspects that are based around the sport. And then finally, now we can look at this and we could say, okay, based off of our peak strength program, we can see, okay, we've got 6 months until we have to peak. We need to focus on sustained impulse. We can do neural coordination movements like power cleans, jumps, and back squats to improve that. We need to focus on some sustained endurance. So that means higher rep sets, like we mentioned. We need to focus on that dynamic trunk control. That's where doing things like Dane's Fast Abs, side med ball throws for distance, anything along those lines is going to help improve that. We implement this into the program, and then we see, okay, how is this individual handling this? We need to test them around another 3 months or another 4 months. Once we test them again, are they better? Did they improve with their benchmark lifts? Did they become better at executing their expectations? Did they train 4 days a week? What are we seeing as those outcomes? And then we can start to compare as we get into the season. How well did they prepare for that season? How well did they handle getting on the slopes that first time? And how well did they adapt to that high speed? That's how you've got to figure out what strength training for skiing, what strength training for snowboarding is going to be. If you guys need help with your training, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS Store. You can download Peak Strength and get into that skiing program. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.